everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. It's time to take a look at the top 5 most important points from this Nigeria trip. The biggest question that the public is left with is, what exactly was this about? What was this trip for? Nigeria was initially booked as an Invictus trip, like a business trip for Invictus. They were invited by the acting defense secretary, I believe it was. The official statement claimed that the visit's goal was to solidify Nigeria's participation in the games, as last year was their first time attending, as well as to gain publicity for their intentions or hopes to host the games in later years. That indicates the invitation, the actual reason for their trip, was for Invictus. Well, if you took a gander at the media coverage, you would certainly not get that impression at all. And that's a problem. Whatever the purpose of a trip is, you must put that as priority. The other frivolous subjects like Meg's heritage or Archwell should not be prioritized. It's not their turn to be highlighted, so to speak. And the reason for that is because the media will grab onto whatever headlines they think will get the most clicks or be the most sensational, and those headlines dominate the entire time. So you have to be very focused in order to ensure that the media coverage actually grabs on to the important thing, the main point of the trip, the actual reason why you're there. In this case, it was allegedly Invictus. But because of Harry and Meghan's behavior, particularly Meghan's, the public is left with the impression that this trip was a Meg goes to Nigeria because she thinks she has ancestors from their trip. And that's not a cause to highlight. That's vanity. Mainstream media certainly didn't highlight Invictus like at all, so despite that being the initial claim of intent, you wouldn't know it. And that was because of the constant references to personal elements that especially Meghan Markle and her claim of 43% Nigerian heritage would have done. If you tried to research this trip, you would get the impression that it was all about Meghan Markle and everything about this trip was to do with that, because there were comments about it in every single event. And this has brought unwanted attention upon Meghan. There are a growing number of people who want proof of this claim, including people from Nigeria. The problem is that this has not been verified, and Meghan has even contradicted this claim in previous years. She claimed to have Maltese heritage, amongst other things. So many people have grown even more skeptical of this 43% that she claims, because of what a focus she put on it during this trip. So she's kind of created a bit of a problem for herself by drawing attention to this at all. Some experts claim that what is today the country of Nigeria has historically been composed of various tribes, and so to claim that you're of Nigerian descent is actually not accurate. To put it briefly, a lot of people don't believe her. The only way to truly know and for her to get out of this mess would be for her to share her actual results. Not likely, though. And I do understand why people are skeptical, because the Meg has lied like a lot. As for these DNA tests themselves, no matter what brand someone uses, they're often not super accurate, in part because they depend on other test results from certain areas. And so each different brand has different data points as their starting base. And oftentimes one person will get varying results across different brands. Furthermore, genetically speaking, the majority of our DNA makeup is composed of our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents, closest generations to us. Most scientists agree that by the time you get to 9 or 10 generations out, so somewhere around 250 years ago, we actually share very little DNA with those ancestors. That means, for example, mid-18th century and further back are really no longer part of our genetic makeup, technically speaking. Regardless, it doesn't really matter whether she is or isn't that exact percentage or what have you. What matters is that it completely overshadowed the trip. The majority of the headlines did include these claims rather than addressing the causes. Another element to this issue that has come up just because Meghan made this a focal point of the trip is Meghan's character harvesting, if you will. A lot of stories have been surfacing about Meghan's tendency to take on or copy certain things from people. It's no secret that Meghan Markle has a reputation for being kind of high in narcissism. And this claim of heritage may be a manifestation of that. Oftentimes, somebody high in those traits lacks a strong sense of self. They often mirror others. And when this bit of information was initially revealed, her claim of 43% Nigerian heritage, she was speaking with a Nigerian guest on archetypes. When the Meg claimed to be Maltese, she was planning a visit to Malta, which was a paid-for PR sort of a visit. And we have seen her in real time copy other women a lot. Just look at these pictures where it is unmistakable copying. Before you say this is a coincidence, someone famous or high profile will be photographed more, and therefore these types of things will happen by accident. There's only so many colors in the rainbow. These types of defenses just do not stick in this situation. Let me just put a stop to that right now. These types of things just don't happen this often. The Meg has many photographs that are almost identical to someone before her. Clothes, poses, filters, locations, sets, accessories, hairstyles are even sometimes duplicated. The styling of the photograph, almost completely identical. That would be absolutely ludicrous to think it is all just a coincidence. It is not. These are all examples of mirroring or copying. And there's others, like taking on similar hobbies or mannerisms or ideas from other people, plagiarizing. Allow me to direct you to Flamingo Estate, which is the template for American Riviera Orchard Montecito. Could this heritage claim be another example of this? Ultimately, the purpose of the trip was supposed to be Invictus. It was overshadowed immensely by the Meg's agenda to highlight a connection of heritage, one that she inadvertently drew unwanted attention to. Instead of some huge positive reaction of her claimed heritage, she has actually made people question her claims even more and research her ancestors and her family tree and things like that. People are digging in and investigating it because she does not have the proof to back up her claims and has been proven to lie in the past. This is the same problem she ran into with Oprah. Because she didn't have any proof to back up these very serious claims, people investigated and found over 17 lies. Some sources claim up to 30 lies in the Oprah interview alone. She drew more attention to her cultural insensitivities, her past distancing of her mixed race, as she spent several years identifying as Caucasian. Nothing wrong with that. But she drew attention to the fact that she only recently became interested in identifying with the other aspects of her heritage. She highlighted her selfish headline hijacking and has set herself up for failure, as she will now be more likely to be questioned about these results, and if she is found to have exaggerated these test results or fabricated them altogether, this trip will be seen in a really terrible, distasteful light. The optics would be absolutely devastating, and that lie would be one that this base she's trying to cultivate would be very offended by. This trip was nothing if not controversial, not only because of UK relations and Commonwealth conflicts creating some sort of a diplomacy awkwardness, but Harry and Meghan also presented a very filtered version of events. They handpicked press allegedly to have freedom, but really it was just to create an image and not be authentic at all. If you can't just let the press see you doing your thing and know it's going to be fine, then you're probably not doing a very good job. If you need to monitor and police every bit of press that comes out of an event, it makes people wonder what exactly you're hiding. Also, the reporting was full of inaccuracies. Nigerian princess claim to name one out of many is simply false. No such thing happened. They were also very disrespectful, showing up late repeatedly, not dressing professionally, and walking around with cranky, sour faces. Because this looked like a pathetic attempt to compete with the actual royals, which is impossible because the actual royals have actual jobs when they go on tour, this whole thing did end up looking very bad and very controversial. The motivations for this trip, because as we already established in point number 1, were under false pretenses. It ended up becoming a very controversial trip just because they presented it as if they were trying to make it like a royal tour and failed miserably. And these complaints of proper dress and being respectful and all the rest do matter. A lot of people say, what does it matter? Well, because it became the Meghan show and the Meghan copies Diana show. There was more attention given to their hand-holding, arguing, unhappiness, and lack of humility than anything else. They presented a grossly filtered version of what they were doing there. And that in and of itself is problematic, but it adds to the controversy nonetheless. Unfortunately for them, it makes people wonder what else is going on. What else are you hiding? Why were you mingling with criminals? What is going on here? And why are they doing it? Are they really just trying to have some sort of petty competition with the royal family? Because if not, then what was it for? It wasn't for Invictus. What is going on? The third big impression everybody's left with is how unprofessional this was. They followed the royal template, but not where it counts. They didn't do their due diligence, which was seen in myriad of ways. Most egregious, the fact that they mingled with fugitives of the United States, wanted for fraud, including money laundering and pyramid schemes, who Harry proceeded to call his in-laws. The man whose airline sponsored their travel, and who is now using it for his own monetary commercial gain. This is unprofessional behavior from Harry and Meghan. It's not a good look. But that lack of due diligence was seen in smaller ways too, even just arriving to events or the receiving of gifts. It was all so unorganized. Throwing this panel discussion into the mix or Archwell exclusives like this school visit were presumably things the Sussex team organized themselves, and the rest of the events were in coordination with the Minister of Defense, who invited the messy couple for the Invictus-related stuff. This was just not put on very well, and it resulted in so many awkward pictures and moments on film like these. They're just completely avoided when the royal family does it, because they have their experienced, dedicated teams organizing and vetting every detail, which brings me to my next point. It was filtered. Very, very filtered. They mostly hung out with the elite crowd, so to speak. Wealthier Nigerians, more upper class, if you will. They didn't have many opportunities to really meet general public. Let's put it that way. And this was a very carefully choreographed decision as well. They just didn't spend time with the public or have any opportunities for the public to gather and meet or see or shake hands with them. And why would they? They're not royals. It's not the same thing. But the media keeps bringing up these pictures from William and Catherine's Jamaica tour. And what I see here in these pictures, despite the narrative that the media tried to run with in real time when this happened, what I see here is a huge public appetite to see William and Catherine, especially when you put it into contrast with Harry and Meghan. I mean, look at the difference. William and Catherine were absolutely swarmed with people who just wanted to see them. They attracted huge crowds, so much so that people gathered everywhere they could, even behind this here fence. They chose to be there to try to get a peek at the royals. This was off the side of an area where they were headed, so the locals had figured out that William and Catherine would have to pass by this area, which was divided by a fence, yes, but that if you waited here, you might get to see them, at least. And because the other areas were already massively full and overflowing, the locals went to this side to try to get a look, and William and Catherine actually came over to say hello, unlike Harry and Meghan, who breezed by the people who were behind a fence trying to see them. Harry and Meghan only met people who they had selected to meet. People who were wealthy, who would give them the right sorts of pictures. That's all. William and Catherine are so popular, so loved and adored that everyone was desperate to see them. And William and Catherine unpretentiously spent time trying to acknowledge all of them, as many as they could. What I see is one couple light years better and more loved and popular than the other. And by presenting such a filtered version and creating such a heavily filtered and controlled event, Harry and Meghan have only drawn attention to the fact that they are nowhere near as loved and magnetic as William and Catherine. Despite the press trying to spin these photographs as bad optics, that was taken out of context. There was a demand for William and Catherine to be there, to be seen, for the public to have access, which they did. These sorts of moments were all organized or requested by Jamaica. And yes, there were a few unplanned moments or hiccups, but they were dealt with gracefully. And overall, the tour actually was a much greater success than the media, thanks primarily to Omid Scobie at the time, trying to skew it as. On the other hand, we have Harry and Meghan souring their own endeavors. They weren't actually coming to Nigeria for Nigerians or for the culture or anything like that, or Invictus. They weren't there for Nigeria at all, but rather very clearly used Nigeria as a pawn for Sussex PR, for monetary gains like Netflix and exclusives in People magazine, to try to boost Meghan's dwindling popularity. And finally, the response. Harry and Meghan have received a very negative response to this trip. If their intent was a long game, doing it for history, for example, building a foundation for future vacations, then they missed the endearing opportunities of actual grounding moments, like spending time with locals. Take, for example, during the South Africa actual royal tour, when Prince Harry joined this tree planting thing and spent a day with the Halo Trust. And despite him clearly just going through the motions, it provided him the image that he had spent the day helping out, that he had dedicated his time to bond with these communities and actually immerse himself in the charity work for the day. He did a bit of light work with these people. And that is why the palace staff organized that day and those outings. Because when somebody spends a day volunteering their time, it's relatable, it's grounding, it's good optics, it's good PR, but also it helps build a relationship and a bond with that charity that's invaluable. You don't get that by just showing up for pictures. The Meg, and apparently Harry, don't like to do that. Meghan likes to give speeches. She likes to receive gifts. She likes to be interviewed. They like to drop in for 15-minute round-table discussions, which is really code for ask the Meg some questions and let her pose for cameras, and then let her hug you for the cameras. By skipping out on meeting real people or dedicating any degree of time, or discussing real issues and challenges, and avoiding anything that resembles volunteer time or work at all, they're not actually giving themselves the sort of foundation that they would need for this to be like some sort of long game plan that like, we're gonna do this Nigeria trip and set a foundation and a template for future trips. We're gonna do this a lot, because they didn't actually immerse themselves at all or spend any degree of time. They just kind of did these little events that were all photo ops and very, very short. Too short to even be of value. But maybe on the other hand, it wasn't for the long game at all. It wouldn't be surprising. They are notoriously short-sighted. If they were doing this all for just short-term gain, then they failed miserably because of the same reasons as why the optics were bad. By not investing in it properly, they look amateur, they look thirsty for attention and in over their heads. It all looked like a publicity stunt. They didn't garner themselves the good PR they seemed to set out to get. And ultimately, it appears this whole thing was for personal gain, for image, popularity, for Netflix, no matter. The point is that the impression the public has gotten out of this trip is that it was not for philanthropic work at all. There were no charities or causes that gained anything. Conman gained a new slogan for his airline, Archwell gained a worse reputation and a harsher lens, and Meghan Herald gained footage they could manipulate. But Nigeria, the people there, the charities, gained nothing. What are the impressions you were left with from this Nigeria trip now that the dust has settled a little bit? Thanks so much for joining me for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you found it at least somewhat interesting to watch. Be sure to click the like button if you did, and don't forget to subscribe. It's totally free, and you won't miss any upcoming videos. Thanks so much again. I hope you have a happy day ahead. I'll see you next time. Bye!